We're live. Wow, that was faster. So Google's definitely changing some stuff. Hey YouTube, it's Dave with Home Server Show. This is the YouTube portion of the audio podcast. If you're interested, we do a audio podcast sometimes once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks. And I'm Dave. I'm joined by Mr. Jim Collison. He is right here. And Mr. Mike Faucher. He is right there. And so this is primarily an audio podcast. You're not going to get like a 3-minute review of QNAP. So this is a discussion. So just saying that.
Dave, I've had to say that too. In fact, I've kind of stolen your 3-minute deal where I just had somebody come in on my YouTube page and like, it took you 3 minutes to get to the topic. You know, and it's like...
It's the worst review ever.
You're like, I don't even allow it.
Start until 35 minutes.
You know, you're like, it's a podcast.
I'm just tired of those comments. Yeah. This is an audio podcast. It's an audio podcast. I haven't even started recording the audio portion yet because we have to get this out of the way. Okay. So hey, we'll do a sound check out there. We are live, by the way.
Now they're seeing Mike, so they must be able to hear us and see us.
Okay, so they got us.
Yep.
They got us. Okay. Okay, I gotta do put my QNAP stuff away. Minimize that. I'll get it rolling. It said server is busy. Please try again later.
You're not starting the demo off very good there, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, this is QNAP, not me. Actually, it just flew by. There it goes. So, well, I'm at the install firmware. We'll stop right there. How about that? And if we need to check in on that, we will check in on that. Okay. There we go. This is the Home Server Show podcast, episode number 288, recorded on it's August the 19th, 2015. Welcome back to the Home Server Show. I'm your host, David McCabe. I always forget what the date is. I don't even really know what the month is. I will know the month next month when it's meetup month. I definitely know that because I'm pulling my hair out, going crazy, trying to get everything up and running. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. Hey, again, I'm your host, Dave. I'm joined by Mr. Jim Collison. How are you doing today, Jim?
Greetings, Dave. Happy August to you. That is the month. It is August. But it will be gone before we know it. So I cannot believe how fast the months are. And I, too, am looking forward to a September meetup. So be good to see everybody out there.
Yes, it will be. I'm looking forward to it as well. And a voice that you haven't heard in a while. Maybe you have heard it if you listen to some home automation podcasts that are friends of the show. But Mr. PCDoc, Mr. Mike Faucher, the full Faucher, is in the house. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm doing good, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
You know, you might be sorry after about an hour of this, but
no. It's a pleasure to have you back. I know
I
I've been
figured out which direction to put the microphone in, so I'm good.
It looks just the same. I just don't see the workout machine behind you.
Yeah. Well, new location, so no workout machine in it.
All right, so we've upgraded. Awesome. No, it's a real great pleasure to have Mr. Mike Faucher on the podcast tonight. So I have to tell you, if you're viewing via YouTube or on Google+, hey, you can come talk to us at homeservershow.com/live. Please go over there. You can chat free. You don't have to log in. And we're going to be talking a whole bunch of NAS. And we're going to talk, that's kind of it. Instead of server talk, a lot of NAS talk, driving the home media, streaming, why we would choose NAS over servers. And I don't know, you guys, if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, I dropped a big bombshell on these guys. And I'm going to tell you about that right after I tell you about the Geeks Network, thegeeksnetwork.com. We are a member of that network, and there's really good podcasts out there, including Jim's. And you got the Missing Remote guys. You've got Darren and John. They're podcasting out there. So everybody take a listen out there to all those great podcasts. And if you get a second, give us some stars over on iTunes. And that's it. That's it. Twitter.com/Home Server Show. And personally, I go by McCabe.io. I got a domain called McCabe.io. So I kind of go by that Twitter handle as well. Okay. So my big bombshell, guys, was I'm thinking about turning off the server. Not necessarily like turning it off, but removing, about 5,000 pounds of hard drives that I have in it right now, and having it not be my central repository of data. Because I'm running a NAS anyway, right? It's my secondary backup. And I have another NAS that's like a tertiary backup in the house, and they're all split on different rooms. So I'm thinking, why am I burning so many watts with this server when all I really do with it is just test virtual machines? Now, in its favor, this machine is running flawlessly. I mean, it's Server 2012, Mike, with the Essentials role installed, so I get the PC backups if I need them. And I've got a couple virtual machines. One is running Media Center. One is running a Plex server. One, I have an Ubuntu Minecraft server, and I have a Windows-based Minecraft server for Pocket Edition. So the iPads and the portable, and that's it. I'm not doing much else. So I'm like, why am I? I mean, this thing is churning away dollars and cents, as the minutes go by. Again, it's a big machine. There's a lot of power. It takes a lot of backup. It takes a lot of wattage going through that. So that's what led me to Mr. Faucher, because I know he's running a QNAP. I know he's tried Synology. And Jim, I gave you a Synology, 2 years ago?
It's been a while. Yeah.
Maybe 3 years ago.
I think 2. And it was here at the. I used it for about a year. I think Gordon Schmidt contacted me. He was like, "Hey, I'd really like to try out that." And so I shipped it to him. He's been using it. He'd actually lost his home server to some, I think, age or something.
Right.
And he's made the switch over to Synology. He just came through town the other day, and we were talking about it, and he's been using that Synology. I've thought about doing it a couple times. The Drobo keeps running, so that's kind of my contribution to the NAS space. And there's been some news there. Dave, we wouldn't be home server guys though if we didn't mention that Windows Server 2016 Technical Preview 3 is out. Right, that just came out here in the last. Right?
Did it finally come out? I know there was a leaked version.
No, I'm looking at MSDN right now.
Okay.
It was announced actually this afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, was it this afternoon? Okay, I've been off the clock.
So breaking news: Hyper-V server and Essentials all technical preview 3, which Susan had alluded to 4 weeks ago when we were podcasting together. So those are all out. So if there's folks interested, I don't know if I'm super motivated to move to it right away. Like you say, my server, Mike, your server, they just run, right? I mean, they're just running, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm not sure I want to monkey around with all the resetup of it. That's the problem for me. It takes a whole day to reconfigure it, get it up and running, move drives around. Mike, are you messing with yours very much?
No, actually, the last time I actually did anything is when I actually migrated from 2012 Essentials over to the QNAP, because I actually went the way that Dave is proposing. So I actually, things powered off, and it's basically not being used anymore. So I still have a server running, two servers running, I should say. But as we were talking in the pre-show, it's mostly for VMs, and I use one for original media storage, which actually stays off most of the time. So it's not actually for daily use. It's mostly for weekly backups.
Okay. It's like that first copy of your DVDs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
It's the original.
The original.
Right. Yeah, so we'll get into that. Server 2012 Essentials. It's nice to know that that those new bits are out, because the last I had heard it was like a leaked build and people were trying to check that out. So that's really nice. I've got a QNAP behind me. It's a TS231 Plus. It's sitting right beside a Synology Beyond Cloud. So Beyond Cloud being like a nice entry level server, and the T31 itself is kind of, or 231 is kind of entry level as well. But still a very nice machine, and I've got it running, up and running, and I'm about to install some firmware on it. So this is my first QNAP experience. We the Home Server Show got a QNAP box a while ago, and I shipped it off to our forums admin, Christopher Kinney, and he's kind of doing all the QNAP heavy lifting. He's the QNAP guy. So it's nice to be on the podcast and talk something like different than Synology. I know, because you guys come on here and I've always got some kind of Synology thing to say, or news or something. So it's nice to get into that. Let me do I have any? I don't think I have anything newsworthy even to start in about. Maybe a little tidbit about Meetup. Guys, I've got 35 registrations maybe on for Meetup 2015, and I've started doing catering. Jim, this is catering week right now, so the numbers are starting to solidify, so I can get a good ballpark, and that's when I start doing the catering job. Of course, if you haven't heard, we're going to be hosted in the Microsoft offices there, really, really close to the Microsoft store. Excuse me. So it's going to be a really nice facility to get super technical, and I've an email went out to everybody registered. So the reason I'm talking about Meetup today is, if you're listening and you think you registered and you didn't get an email, you need to contact me. That means I don't have you on my list. I think that I have everybody. I'm like 99.9% positive I've got everybody. But if you're listening to this and you did not get an email, make sure you drop me a line, podcast@homeservershow.com. Make sure I know you're out there and that you want to come and you want to register for the event, because day of the event, it's it's kind of closed. I probably won't turn anybody away, but I'm just, we want you to pre-register. That way I can have names and numbers and all kind of good stuff like that. Once we get rolling in the Meetup, yeah, there's no getting in. There's no leaving alive either.
Dave, I'm kind of excited this year. A different venue. It'll be a little challenge, but I think being on campus will be better for us. And I'm excited about the guys are bringing some great gear, and there's just going to be a really good opportunity to network. And Microsoft Store, we've ditched Fry's, right? It's just Microsoft Store at this point.
I hate to say that we've ditched Fry's, but the location of the Meetup is. Yeah, it's not going to allow us a trip to Fry's, so I'm not even going to.
In the sense that we just can't make it in the time, and it'll be nice. We'll get a little bit more time for networking. I think it'll feel a little less rushed, and
it'll clean up the evening timeline tremendously.
Yeah. So, I'm excited. I'm not driving. This is the nice thing. I've driven to every single one of these, and I'm flying this time, and I've got work, so I've got to fly in and fly out here pretty quick to get that done, but. Be nice just to fly in, pick up a rental car, come on up, and hang out with you guys. So if you haven't pulled the trigger, pull it.
Yeah. Again, we have folks coming in from all over. I got 2 folks from Colorado, East Coasters flying in. So there's really nothing holding you back except that expense. I know that it's an expense, but there are second timers, third timers, all kinds of folks coming back to this Meetup, because it really is. It is fun. And if you don't know about Meetup, there will be a link in the show notes, or you can just go over to homeservershow.com/forums, and you'll be able to find it there in the very top forum. There's some discussion about it right there in the podcast forum. Okay, let's talk. I'm thinking about making that switch, Mike, and I said in my last podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of things to think about because things happen automatically for me that I'm real comfortable with. I've got that server of mine. For the biggest part of it is called Crash Plan. I've got
Yeah.
that Crash Plan on a PC, and I do not worry about it. I know it backs up. I'm confident in the fact that if I put a new photo in my photos directory, and right now I'm on fiber, so I'm real comfortable with my bandwidth as well. I have it checked like every 2 hours. So if I don't even check at midnight anymore, Mike, and make
Mm-hmm.
that copy. It's every 2 hours. That server also goes out to my web server and downloads backups, all my WordPress backups, which I'm running like 5 sites right now. So it grabs those,
Mm-hmm.
and it does everything flawlessly. So I really I really have to plan for a migration to NAS. Did you run into this?
Well, sure. I mean, I think any of us that have infrastructure that we've already set up, you're going to run into some of those issues. Crash Plan was a big concern for me initially. I've actually since then moved away from it. But Crash Plan does have a native app for the QNAP. It has a couple of I won't call them weaknesses, but idiosyncrasies in setting it up. But for the most part, it's supported. The other challenges you're facing as far as backing up your websites, I assume you're doing that through FTP, and that's also supported on the QNAP. So, as I broke down the list of things that I really needed to do, what really ended up being essential for me was to get the data that I had on the server out to the cloud or cloud services. And for me, that's predominantly S3 and Glacier. Since I moved sort of away from Crash Plan. That being said, Crash Plan can still be used even with the QNAP. You can either use the native app, as I mentioned, or you can do it through one of other means such as VMs and things like that. So there are workarounds if that's important to you. But that's sort of what I went through as far as the process of elimination.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking as well. I've got an Evernote, note started, and I'm kind of just off the top of my head. Here's what I got to
Right.
think about, and how would I do this, and how would I do that. And honestly, I'm thinking, I know it's not terribly popular in some of the NAS world because of the speed, but I was gonna try to possibly leverage OneDrive a little bit more, and the fact that like having a copy of my audio out there, having a copy of my photos out there, because I have a tremendous amount of storage out there. And another service that I find myself using more and more is Amazon's like cloud.
Mhm.
They've got a little Android app for photos, and you can stream that to the Amazon PC stick or the Amazon Fire Stick, and it's kind of handy. So I was thinking about maybe trying to leverage some of those services a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't want to give up anything when you're doing a project migration like this. And OneDrive, I believe, is getting some recent support from QNAP as well. For me, I think the biggest hurdle that I had to cross was the client backups more than the
Hmm.
cloud backups, because the cloud backups I think are pretty well supported. I mean, Elephant supported. There's Google Drive is supported. There's a bunch of the cloud services that are supported, and so I didn't worry too much about that as long as I could get the things to work right. And it turns out their native apps are pretty good. I wouldn't say they're nearly as flexible, as something that you would run on the server, but they're functional. You can get your folders, you can get the stuff that you want, you can selectively pick out. You don't have to back up, and you can selectively pick subfolders and things like that. So there's a lot of flexibility there, and they work pretty reliably. You can schedule them. You can do. You have several different options you can pick from.
Okay. You did mention client PC, and
Yeah.
I've sort of I come from the era of Windows Home Server where I had many client PCs. I had a PC, we had a second PC in the house, and each of us had a laptop, and we'd always back those things up. So it was like religiously you would back those things up, and
Right.
had to restore a few in my day.
Yep.
And it's getting to that point where I kind of transitioned into the tablet world, and where
Yeah.
you could pull an image instantly and refresh, and then get your apps off of the cloud and just reconfigure, and you're kind of up and running. And now I feel like I'm coming into a new era in my household where I might have a couple of laptops, pretty soon with kids. And I know they've got their little iPads at school, but you need something real you can work on,
Yeah.
and write and do papers. And I feel like I'm going to get into that pretty soon. Again, is needing a client backup solution. So, Mike, have you gone with just keep my documents on the QNAP, keep them on the NAS, and then pull them off, and then just re-image if you need to? Or are you doing full bare metal software somehow with your QNAP?
Yes, yes, and yes. So for starters, I've kind of moved to a central storage kind of scenario, and I still think that's a great solution. Unfortunately, not everybody, there's ways to get around the central storage solution, and somehow files manage to end up on all over the place on different PCs. So I think it's really a combination of both. But honestly, for bare metal backups, I've actually switched everything to Acronis. And the reason I did that is because I had a lot of problems with Server Essential restores. The backup stopped working for a while. So it ended up to not provide me the level of confidence that I was really looking for. Knock on wood, Acronis has never really let me down, and it's been probably the most reliable solution I've seen to date. So I've kind of decided I'm going to, you can buy them in the 3-pack, and I've kind of decided to take the critical systems that I think need to be backed up to be able to do a bare metal restore like my main PC and such, and I back those up via Acronis to the QNAP, and then everything else is basically data only. And if I need to install, with the performance of systems nowadays, doing a full install on a couple pieces of software isn't a long task like it used to be.
Yeah, it's so true, and that's a good thing. That really is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
My question is, Acronis, I mean, it's a fantastic software. And the first argument you get from the diehard Windows Home Server people is that it doesn't, you have to have an image backup for each PC.
Yes.
So it's going to take up a lot of space on that server. I mean, is this something you found to be a problem?
Not really, because you typically, and I'm generalizing here, but typically in a household you might have 1 or 2 PCs that have a lot of stuff on them, and the rest are basically, end up surfing the internet and doing email most of the time. So for the most part, there is extra storage required. I mean, you are going to have some replication of files, which was a nice thing about the native Windows Server type backup. Mm-hmm. But in the grander scheme of things, if that space is that you saved, it doesn't result in a restore, it didn't buy you anything in the first place. So I would prefer to give up a little bit of storage and know that I'm going to be able to do a restore effectively and call it a day. So to me, the 20 gigs or whatever you're going to give up is not that big a deal. So that's the direction I opted. It may not work for everybody, but for me, that was the best solution. And I'm not limited by 2 terabyte issues. I'm not limited by anything other than, my own doings.
Mike, what version are you running of Acronis?
Acronis? Mm-hmm. 2015, I believe.
Yeah, no, I upgraded to that too. I actually run those. I run them. I've got a Windows Server backup going on this box, but I wanted to try a Cronus. It'd been a
Yeah.
while, and so I think I actually, with maybe even 2013 or 2014, I had purchased that version, and so I'm doing a double backup and running it to the Drobo. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's efficient. It just runs. It does its thing.
It's fast.
That's yeah, it is. It's been a good alternative. I hear a lot of bare metal folks, when we talk about other solutions and blah 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 bare metal. I can't live without my bare metal, and I think bare metal's overrated. But that being said, I'm running a Cronus on my main box. This is the important one that I need.
Right.
If things do fail, I've got it backed up twice. So all that said, I have two bare metal solutions backing it up. So I guess I can't really talk.
I think the biggest thing that I hear is, people want their bare metal, and but it's the single instance storage.
Yeah.
People don't want to back up 10 PCs and have 10 different, huge backup images on that server.
Yeah, but space has never been cheaper. I mean, that's the thing. Is that we build these monster servers, and I mean, in my case, the Drobo sits with about 4 terabytes of space, and I'm using like 600 meg. So I'm like, I don't care how big they are, as long as it does it fast and I can get it back again. So I don't know, Dave, if that, and maybe I could be wrong. I'm not sure anymore. If the space like it was in 2007 and 2008 when we were building home servers, and space was critical, I'm not sure if it's that critical anymore.
I think it's a consideration, but I agree with you. It's probably not as critical as it used to be. But it's not a everybody has a different situation. If you've got 10 or 15 PCs at home and they, everybody's hoarding music on them and all that kind of stuff, then you're going to have an issue. So you either have to fix the root cause and get all that stuff off of there and onto your central storage, or you're going to have to figure out how to do client backups and be able to do it effectively. But you gotta be able to look at the situation and decide which way you want to go. I would have, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have sat there and told you, no way, I'm not giving up my Windows home server, and I'm not going to do the client. I'm not giving up the client backups. But since then, I've done so many installs, I've had so many restores fail on me that, it didn't buy me anything at the end of the day. So it's like if I'm going to do something, I want something that's actually going to work. It's going to be reliable. And if I need to, compromise anything, I need to figure out what that is. And for me, that was compromising a little bit of space. And, at the end of the day, bare metal backups typically save you time. It's not usually a matter of life and death. If you do have data on there that's a matter of life and death, it shouldn't be the only backup you have. So, and that's where your, central apps for, QNAP, or from whether it's a QNAP or Synology or whatever you're using, looking at the cloud for those types of solutions is what you need to be doing. So I think I've reevaluated kind of where I stand with that, and I just look at things differently now, and I just I'm kind of an advocate now of trying to minimize, to be a little bit more of a minimalist, which doesn't fit my Urban Dictionary
that's hard
definition.
to do.
But I originally started down this path because I wanted to conserve heat and power. I mean, when I still have 3 servers and 5 PCs in one room, so the heat was becoming an issue for me, and the cooling and all that. So to start paring things down and start to look at ways of conserving power and not dropping a lot of heat into a single room, became the major focus. So the QNAP was one of the many steps that I did to try and get that footprint down, and so far it's been a really, really good solution.
Well, it is getting closer and closer to winter time, so we could just say, well, the heck with it, and heat our houses with these servers. But I totally understand you. A lot of folks, especially overseas, they're not quite as lucky as we are to pay the prices for power that we do, and
right.
So that is one of my concerns, is trying to use a little less power, because we can all save somewhere. I honestly, I want to turn mine off. I do.
Yeah.
I really want to turn it off and run things on these NAS boxes. I've got a couple running already, one being a surveillance station, and the other one being, the file repository and a Plex server. I'm going to need a Plex server.
Mm-hmm.
So
Everyone needs a Plex server. Yeah.
everyone needs a Plex server. And I got in on the lifetime deal, thank goodness, before it went away. So, my last question on backups is: so you're using that? Does the Corona software, is it like fail safe? Is it going to back up? Is it scheduled? Does their server do it, or does each PC do it automatically?
In my case, each PC is doing it because I'm only using 3 copies. So, I'm not backing. I'm not doing full metal restore on every PC because for reasons we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really running only 3, and they're running. One of them is a laptop. So that laptop runs when it boots. If you've ever run a Cronus, you'll know that it takes about 3 minutes to actually run through because it's a differential backup. So it actually looks for changes, updates those changes, and away we go. So it's not a huge deal in terms of taking up resources or time.
Okay, that's cool. And recently we've heard of some other ways to do this, including a software called Veeam, Veeam.
Mm-hmm.
I know Paul Braren is a big fan of Veeam, and I actually met a guy locally here in Indianapolis who is a small business guy, and they install Veeam like crazy. They're a big Veeam shop. So we'll try to talk a little bit more about that. It is out of the beta. It is still free, and is much improved. And honestly, I would like to try that someday soon. But I'm not at that point yet. Not there. I'm going slowly. I'm going to go slowly. Mike, how have you perceived the transition with, I'm going to say, like, not remote desktop, but like remote access? That used to be such a huge thing for Windows Home Server people, and it was for me too, that well, I can remote into my server, and then I can remote into PCs in the house. Do you use any of that, or did it affect you any?
Yeah, no, actually, I'll tell you why. And I've been preaching this for quite some time, even for years. Is I'm a big, huge fan of using a VPN, and so I'm an open VPN advocate, which I run off of my Untangle, but which is also one of the items that's supported on many of these NAS units. So the punchline is, I don't worry about any of that stuff because I basically remote in through VPN and everything is open to me. So whether I want to, do a browser configuration on the QNAP or the Synology, or whether or not I want to run a remote desktop or whatever it is that I want to do, including the mobile apps, I use OpenVPN to get in. So I've locked down everything in terms of security and a bunch of ports, because if you've ever used a NAS unit, you'll find that you've got like 28 ports you've got to open in order for all these different features to work right, and it's just insane. So they've tried to lock some of that up by using the cloud and using kind of almost a DNS type approach, which works pretty well, but it's really, again, aimed at somebody who's got a UPnP router. So I don't like all that stuff. I'm still because of what happened to me recently, which will be an entirely different podcast of security. I really tend to want to lock things down now, and I prefer to just come in through one channel and call it a day.
Okay. Are you do you pass through with your router and terminate that VPN on the QNAP, or are you terminating that VPN with your Untangle box? I'm just curious.
I'm terminating at the Untangle box right now. I have tried the QNAP and it works fine, but I prefer to have it on the Untangles, and it's a more direct approach. Gets me into the other services a little bit easier.
Right. Yeah, I found that as well. Very good. I know the other thing big and major in your life is home media streaming.
Mhm.
ripping, and I know that's been a big part of this community as well. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I haven't ripped in a long time, Mike. I probably have a stack of DVDs I need to gather up and then rip and then save. But honestly, I haven't watched a whole lot of DVDs from my Plex server as well. But
Okay.
how do you transition? Because I'm running My Movies.
Mhm.
That's the plugin for Windows Home Server. It's a plugin called My Movies, and I can drop a DVD or a Blu-ray right into my tray and then close it, and it drops into my DVD directory, and I'm good. I don't
Right.
even I don't even know it's done. It's just it's done. I walk by it a week later and I see the tray open with a movie hanging out of it. Like, oh, okay, that's done. So put that away. And
Yeah, that's one thing you'll probably give up. I mean, I've never done it that way, so it's not something that I was too concerned about. But for those who are using that type of automation in the home server and just doing it by dropping a DVD in, you're going to lose that. I found that, like I said, I really wasn't too concerned about it because I'm using the same components that My Movies is using. I'm using TS Muxer and AnyDVD. So for me, it wasn't a huge deal. I prefer the controls of selecting what I want, what I don't want, which languages to remove, all that kind of stuff. I prefer to do it manually anyway, because it's not something that we do 20 a day anyway. It's just for our own personal viewing.
okay, and I think maybe My Movies has a way to do this on the PC itself, on the client. I think I haven't done it in a long time.
It does. You can achieve more or less the same results by using it on a VM, let's say. Well, the
Hmm.
VMs don't support maybe depending on how you want to, how you want to copy that movie, where you want to copy it to, you might be a little bit more limited, especially if you're using USB drives. But you can certainly do it on any client PC and
Hmm.
server or any other way that you want to do it. I just chose to do it automatically, or I mean manually. Excuse me.
Manually, yeah. Yeah, I'm a slave to that My Movies. It's been a great little program for me. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is we don't watch anything via Media Center anymore.
Right.
Uh,
Me neither. Yeah.
we we've just been we're a slave to Netflix and Amazon Prime now. So
I'm actually doing 100% Plex, so I'm using Home Theater PC still, but they're no longer running Media Center. They're actually running Plex Home Theater, so
mhm.
which I found to be a very interesting piece of software. I think it works really well as long as you don't need recorded TV.
Yeah, and of course there are ways around that too. If you put a
Hmm.
little effort into it with Plex, and yeah, we get to Plex from Roku.
Yes,
And we
me too.
also
Yeah.
get I've got the little Tableau TV back here that records 2 channels at a time. We get to that from Roku, so we do
Yeah.
pretty well. I did actually. I tweeted out today there was a deal on the HP Stream Mini. That's a little bitty baby PC. It's a Celeron processor. It's blue, and it used to go for a couple $100, but Woot had it for 100 something. And so I picked one of those up, and I think that's going to replace my like 8-year-old Atom motherboard. So hopefully that's a good upgrade. Hopefully it will be able to handle it just fine. So I'll have a new quote unquote Windows Media Center driving my TV. Um, the other thing is just pure streaming. I know we've kind of bantered around with Plex, but you're a big movie guy, and you
Hmm.
always have been, and you're probably Lord knows how much you're storing, but you're using Plex to play back those movies. How have you found the Plex native client on QNAP to be?
I actually didn't have any problem with it. I only used it for a short time, and the reason I used it for a short time is because I actually had Plex set up on a VM,
Hmm.
which had significantly more power than the
Right.
QNAP. And for most users, they're going to have real favorable results. If you tax it too much, I mean, there's a threshold of pain on a NAS unit, so you're only going to be able to do so many streams at the same time. So with the by using the approach that I took, which is putting it on a VM and then putting the content on the QNAP, I've streamed 6 full Blu-ray streams simultaneously and didn't even break a sweat. And that's the type of performance that I prefer to have. So I opted to move it back to the VM as opposed to leaving it on the QNAP, because I know it's not going to do 6 at the same time, especially if there's any transcoding involved. The QNAP I'm using, we probably should clarify that the QNAP I'm using is using the Intel Celeron. So,
Okay.
and it's obviously the new version of the Celeron. It's not the what was used to be labeled the Celeron.
Right.
And it's actually a very powerful chip, and it does an excellent job with just about anything you throw at it. I've even run virtual machine off of the QNAP, which was a really interesting experience to load a copy of Windows 10 on a NAS unit. So, but you know, the power is there, and you can use it, and you can do more than you can with some other ARM type devices.
Right. Yeah. You know, any NAS is going to be limited on their ability for that high horsepower applications. You know, not just the QNAPs.
No.
You know, something I found really interesting about QNAP is, you know, a lot of their bigger boxes have HDMI out right on the back of those things, and people are putting them right by their TV. Even
that's kind of the unit I'm using has an HDMI out, and it does have some native applications that allow you to do, you know, virtually everything you can on a PC and start, you know, doing HD playback, doing Plex streaming, doing whatever you want, DLNA, AirPlay, you know, just about anything you want to throw at it.
Another thing, I was this last year at CES, I was in the QNAP suite, you know, taking a run through all their new boxes, and you know, you can get a Core i7 in one of these things now, so you might be able to do 6 streams from you know, some of the new boxes. But the coolest thing is they had the QNAP sitting on the table and a monitor with keyboard and mouse, and then you were working on the QNAP, you know, right there.
Right.
You know, in most situations, you're like, okay, where's the laptop? I need to log in to the NAS device. It's like, no, the keyboard and the mouse are plugged in to the NAS device. It is the machine. Right. And I don't know why that struck me as like that's the coolest thing ever. That was,
well, because it makes it a whole different, you know, use case, especially if you don't have a PC and you don't, you know, or if you have only maybe a laptop. It's a great use case to actually put by your TV and, you know, drive the content. You know, they call it hybrid desk, so it's kind of, you know, it tries to replicate what a desktop would do as well as a streaming box would do. So I think it's a really cool idea. You know, this is all kind of, I mean, there's so many things you can try on these NAS units now that you can configure, and, you know, more options than, you know, almost more options than you could put on a, you know, standard Windows server. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're only going to probably use 5% of what they have to offer, and you settle in on the stuff that's really important to you, and that's what you tweak with.
Well, let's settle in on some stuff that's important to me, and that's just like redundancy. You know, these NAS devices, that's their first goal, is, you know, to keep your data redundant. And what are you using in yours? Maybe you've got the Celeron, but how many bays do you have? What kind of redundancy are you using on that thing?
I kind of recommend only using a 4-bay or higher, just because what I'd like to do is, you know, number one, you want expandability, and number two, I prefer, and it's probably not a big secret, I always have preferred a RAID 5 configuration because it makes maximum use of your storage. You lose less of the available storage to redundancy. So I've always been a big fan of RAID 5. So I'm going with a 4-bay. I went with a 4-bay, and I used 3 6-terabyte REDs. as my base point. So that's what I started with the understanding that I could put a fourth one in there should I need it. So for all practical purposes, I have close to 12 terabytes out of the NAS unit. Because it was there and I'm not presently using that bay, I opted to put a extra Samsung SSD in that fourth bay to play around with the SSD cache acceleration features, and that's a sort of an interesting mixed bag of results. But so I kind of went that way. But they've made it super easy to remove if I want to remove it and replace it with a physical hard drive if I want to do that. But for now, I'm just taking advantage. It's there. It's not. It does help. It does provide some performance gains, especially when you're reading data, and especially when you're accessing a lot of the common data. It does a really good job at tracking itself.
Okay. I was going to ask you just real quick, how did that SSD do? Because I was thinking about trying some of that myself.
I've been monitoring it and testing it on and off, and you won't see obviously much in a benchmark or anything like that, because the model I'm using is the TS451, and it's pretty fast as it is. But you do actually see it in a real life application. So as you start to poke around the same data, you'll notice a slight performance gain and a more of a reaction, much as you would on a cache of any kind. The typical, at least what I've been measuring, the typical hit rate's been about 20%. So but I've seen it as low as 2% and as high as 40 or 50. So it depends on what you're doing at the time. Your results will vary depending on the kind of data. I can tell you that if you do a lot of movie work or movie copying or something like that, it does absolutely nothing. But if you're doing a lot of little files and things like that, there is some performance gain out of it. So if you got an SSD kicking around, I would use it. I wouldn't probably go buy one to put into the NAS unit.
Right. Well, the other factor is I don't even know if it's the expense of the SSD drive anymore as it is the expense of the slot.
Right.
The NAS.
Right. That's true. When you've got 4 bays and your only recourse for upgrading beyond 4 bays is to use an extension box, which costs twice as much more than the original NAS, then that slot becomes extremely valuable. Which is kind of why I prefaced earlier. I'm using the SSD, but if I run out of storage, if I get anywhere near the end, it's going to go out of there real quick. Yeah.
Right. What do you think about like backups on premise? I'm talking about in your house. Because we've always preached that RAID 5, it's not a backup solution. It's a redundancy solution.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you treat backups, that first backup, in your house? I mean, do you have a solution or
well,
going cloud?
Yeah, I've got actually 2 separate cloud solutions, and I have one other physical box that I also back up to. So the quantity of backups hasn't changed for me. So I still have 1 on-premise and 2 off-site. So that's how I'm handling it. As I mentioned on the pre-show, I have server 2012, storage server 2012, which I'm using as a kind of a backup server. And that's basically where I house my first copy.
Okay. And then you're using Glacier?
I'm using S3, the standard S3, and Glacier.
Okay. So costly and cheap.
Yeah, actually, it's been actually I don't consider either one costly, but I'm not copying the same amount of data. I put more on the Glacier.
You're selective on S3.
Yeah, I'm more selective on S3. It's more stuff that I would tend to want to get to faster and not wait 2 or 4 hours to be able to do a restore. Glacier, I'm more generous and stuff that isn't necessarily going to need to be pulled down right away, like photos and things like that. That's where I tend to migrate that stuff to.
Okay. All right. Are there any other like specialty applications you're using on the QNAP? Because like we said before, they've got an app for everything that seems to
Yeah, yeah.
run on the device itself.
I'm using. I got a couple that I kind of like. I mean, I use their antivirus, so it's kind of nice to have that just off to the side protection. And then I've played around with the VM station. That I'm gonna build a couple of machines, VM machines that I'm gonna experiment with going forward. I did have it, and then I tore it down, and I haven't put them back up yet. And basically, I'm kind of liking their photo station. So that seems to do a pretty good job, and it's pretty quick and responsive. So I like that. The rest of the stuff has been more of, let's try it, see if it works, and decide whether or not I want to use it or not. So, the surveillance station is really nice. Their licensing is insane. So
Why
it's
is that?
I don't know.
Synology's the same way.
Yeah, it's the same. Well, it's probably licensed through a third party, but
$50 a camera.
yeah, and I've got presently that I've installed 7 cameras, and I've got 3 more to install. There's no way that I'm paying that much in licensing fees, so it's just not worth it to me. It's actually cheaper to buy a copy of Windows 10, put it on a VM on the NAS unit, and run iSpy for free on the software on the VM and accomplish the same exact results. Now, it's not as nicely integrated as the surveillance package, but you can accomplish the same thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you're only going to look at that console a couple times, and once you're comfortable with how it's recording and what it's doing and all that kind of stuff, you just want it to work. So to me, if I could get a package deal on a license, I would do that in a flash, because I would love to have that. To me, the NAS unit is the ideal place to have security camera integration, but they've just made it insane to do that.
I honestly think if they would have a sale, they do it twice a year, I think they would sell so many licenses it would make their head spin. And I do not know why they do that.
Yeah, people are using the available licenses that comes with the box. In the case of the TS 451, it's 2 licenses, so I can run 2 cameras for free, but anything beyond that I pay through the nose.
Yeah. Synology's the same way. God love them. I love those boxes, but sometimes it's cheaper to find a cheap NAS and turn on a brand new NAS that has 2 fresh licenses in it, and then just use the consoles, use CMS and put them together, and boom, you've got, 4 licenses. And the logic, just to get sidetracked in the Synology surveillance system is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I've got it to the point where I've got I can use a motion sensor on my smart things, and that smart things, if I say, okay, motion sensed, over here, trigger a camera on Synology. If that camera triggers, it'll trigger every camera in my Synology system, and I can start recording like that. Or I have a Z-Wave switch, from my phone. If I think, okay, something screwy is going on here, I can say, start, and it'll trigger every single camera in my Synology system. And it's really nice. The logic they're putting behind these systems is pretty fantastic. So, guys, sell us some licenses.
Yeah, make it affordable. I mean, even $20 a license, I could swallow, but 50 is just crazy.
I would go half. Okay, it's $50 a license. I would drop $100 right now for 4 licenses. Synology QNAP. Right now. If you sent me a coupon code in my email right now, no problem. It's done. I would do it.
Can't disagree with any of that. I mean, there's a untapped possibility there. I think a lot more people would take advantage of that surveillance package. They've got a new version that's in beta right now that's pretty nice, and I think there'd be a lot more people taking advantage of getting licenses instead of just saying, I'm just going to live with the 2 cameras and figure out how to do with the rest if I do have any rest.
Have you ever done the dual NIC where you gang them together and then buy the switch to make it
Teaming?
Yeah, teaming to make it faster. And have you ever done any of that business?
Yeah, actually, I didn't buy the switch. I didn't buy a teaming switch, but there are ways to take advantage of it without the teaming switch. Certainly, Server 2012 Essentials did a nice, or Server 2012, I should say, R2 does a nice job with teaming. And QNAP, and I'm sure Synology as well, they also do a nice job, and they manage those switches internally, so they kind of share the bandwidth. And you can get some pretty good performance without taxing down your NAS unit. Case in point would be if you're copying large amounts of data, it's gonna saturate the one NIC, and the other NIC will just kick in, and it'll upload, it'll download other things. So it's really interesting to watch that on the charts and graphs and see what happens when you start loading these things up. But that was one of the things that surprised me, because that really aids in the overall performance. I'm kind of tough to please when it comes to performance, especially when it comes to file transfers. And I was really impressed with how fast this thing was, because I can saturate my network without trying too hard, and that's really what I want to see. I want to keep things at the max. So, if something gives me 50, 60 megabytes a second, I don't particularly want it. I'm giving up too much. You're already kind of giving up something with the server. It can't be performance. It has to be something else.
Mm-hmm. The chat room's going crazy on this camera thing. They're already talking Blue Iris.
Yeah,
and I know you mentioned iSpy, which I've looked at that before.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Iris is a great package. iSpy is pretty good, but if you add all those up together on top of a license, it's still cheaper than buying, surveillance licenses, which is insane. So that, I mean, the power you get out of some of these apps like Blue Iris and iSpy, you can put together some extremely elaborate security systems, and you end up saving money. So it's, for me, I've been running iSpy in a VM for a couple years now, and I've had really good luck with it. It records when it's supposed to. It allows me to view when I want to view. It allows me to play back. It allows me almost a mind-spinning amount of options that I can do in configuring the recording and cameras.
Yeah.
You need faster fiber.
They're like, because it's important, Dave. We like it. Yeah, I like it too. And I ran iSpy quite a bit, and I since settled back into the Synology product because it doesn't officially integrate with SmartThings, but I have a SmartThings dashboard in my app, and if I'm in the app and I need to take a quick picture just to see what's going on, like if my kitchen is flooded, Mike, I can do a little snapshot and see what's going on. So, I know I love the cameras. I was checking. I got a wet sensor notification from SmartThings while I was in Italy. And it just so happened that we were in a car and we were driving down an Italy freeway, and so we turned the data on the phone. We had 100 meg, and I jumped in real quick, and I actually jumped into a D-Link, the D-Link, my D-Link app, and I popped into a D-Link camera, a little cheapie that I had sitting in the basement to make sure everything was okay, and it was okay. It was just the pit had I guess the float on the pump, it got stuck or something, and it
Mm-hmm.
rose up, and it needed just to go another like quarter of an inch, but that water being so high and so close to the sensor started condensing, and
Yeah.
it got the sensor to report. There wasn't a flood, but it got the sensor to report, so it was pretty slick. Pretty slick.
Well, you got me. I'm a believer. I've got unfortunately firsthand experience on how effective those sensors can be. So I can tell you that I'm now up to I think 11 sensors, 11 leak sensors for that reason.
Yeah.
So.
They do work, and it, as in your case, it was traumatic, but it probably saved you thousands and thousands of dollars on top of what you did spend in repairs because you
Absolutely. I
caught
would
it
have.
quickly.
I was gone for almost 3 days, and had it not been caught when it was, and get somebody over to turn off the water, it would have been all of the house would have been pretty much underwater and would have destroyed, all the flooring and half the walls. So yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a bathtub in your house. Oh, disaster.
Oh yeah.
Disaster. Oy. All right, so I'm going to pose a question to both of you. If someone came into your house today and said, all right, you can have one, you can have your server 2012 with your essentials, or you can have your NAS box. Pick one, because I'm walking away with the other one right now. PCDoc?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question because I kind of used them in tandem. But if I had to choose, I would really probably have to, and this is probably might surprise some people, I would have to pick the QNAP instead of this Windows Server, only because it's for reasons that we've already covered. It's suiting the bill for me equally, if not more so, than I was getting out of Windows Server. And my compromise or my sacrifice is pretty minimal. So I'd have to go with that. I would probably, if I had to do it again, I might consider buying a little bit faster, larger NAS, like possibly an 8-bay. But I just found those to be price prohibitive, especially when I was going down sort of uncharted territory. So I wasn't sure I was going to like it. Because my first experience when I got to Synology, I wasn't really impressed. The performance just didn't work for me. So I didn't know what really was going to happen. So the short answer is I'd probably go with the QNAP.
Mm-hmm. Well, it becomes a question. It's like, what can this do that this can't? And pretty much anything you can do on that QNAP, you can pretty much do over here on the server, except the QNAP is just okay. It's like a little software repository. It's like an app store. You go to the store and say, hey, I need cameras. Click. Hey, I need Plex. Click. It's a little easier.
If we go back to the power discussion, given all things being equal, I'm drawing about a little over 30 watts coming out of the wall for the QNAP, and that's with, as I mentioned, about 12 terabytes. If I look at the server that was running approximately the same amount of storage, I'm up in the 90 watt range. So, and you certainly have a big, larger physical footprint. Now, you could argue some of that is because I was using more smaller drives and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, you still got a far more power efficient system. That if I look at the power consumed over the day, even the power management tools in the QNAP, and I'm only using QNAP because that's what I'm using, but the power management tools are far more to where it even manages the power levels of the RAID, which is typically not a good combination. So at the end of the day, it does save you a lot of power, a lot of heat. And as I mentioned, for me, it's heat because my air conditioning bill is already large enough. So.
Right. Yep. Luckily, mine's in a basement, so it's
Yeah.
nice and cool. Nice and cool. Collison, you're up.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you gave me some time to think about this because I think initially when you first said it, I'm like server all the way, and then, I started thinking, Mike, power is nice, and reduced power is nice, and I'm running a lot of my VMs on Azure now. Now, not everybody can do that, but when I need to fire up a box, I can fire up the box on Azure. Certainly, you wouldn't want to run long-term boxes on Azure, so you guys run VMs for a lot of your Plex and some of those kinds of things, and I think that's where for most of the NAS stuff still is not. You can run VMs, but I don't know. I guess I need to test it out a little bit more because I really like the VM side of server, right? I'm using less and less storage, and I'm using it more and more for VMs, but I do use some storage on it as well. I've got 2011 running in the back. That's a tough call. That's a super tough call for me. I don't have a QNAP. I've run Synology. I like those apps. With all those things considered, if I had to have one today, I guess it would probably be a NAS.
Okay, I thought I was going to get you on server. All the guys in the chat, you can pry their server from their cold, dead fingers. They're not going to give them up. But these guys, they're a crazy bunch of guys. Okay,
Dave, I'm using it less and less. That's the thing. We talked about all these services, right, that we were using server for, and I'm just using those less and less.
Right.
And so when you think about the trade-off and the benefit of those other things, and you really start thinking about it, but that's for me. I know a lot of these guys live on these boxes, and so it's like, well, I don't anymore. It's not as important as it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I fired up that Server 2012 box so long ago. I mean, if I opened it up, I'd be like, what the hell is this drive doing? I have no idea what it's doing. I honestly don't. It's a mess. It's a mess. It's worked so well for so long, I have no clue what it's doing.
There is a difference. I spent a whole weekend building that last time I did this and reconfigured my 2012 box. I spent a whole weekend setting that thing up, getting the RAID working right, getting the drives in there in the right place, labeling them, setting it up right. When you think about your traditional NAS, like that's 10 minutes. Put the drives in, turn the thing on, do some configuration, and you're kind of off to the races. You're already messing with the apps. You're already in there setting stuff up, and so from that standpoint, I just think it's a lot easier to jump on a NAS and get moving right away than setting up the box. Now, again, guys like that, right? There's some people who really like that, that turbo jet engine running in their basement, those kinds of things that bring some satisfaction. I get that. Exactly.
Okay, let me see if I can change your mind. Yeah. All right, boys, I just walked out with Faucher's server, and I just walked out with Collison's server. You're left with your NAS. Now, as I walk out the door, I give you a little tidbit of information. I'm like, okay, now I got your server, boys. The Grim Reaper is going to visit the main board of your NAS in 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So think of failure. Think of replacement. Now, server guys like, whatever, Dave. I can put a new motherboard in there in 2 seconds flat. Amazon Prime, bitches, But NAS is different because I know my Synology. Those drives are not going to go into a server. You are not getting your data off of those drives.
You're going to end up putting those drives into another NAS is what you're going to end up doing. So your failure mode and your recovery is a little different than it was when you could slap a new motherboard in there, which isn't 2 minutes, by the way. It's got other side effects there, but the drives are can be inserted into another NAS, and there is a small little process you can do to actually reattach that RAID array into the new NAS, and you're up and running in no time. So I think either path has a hardware recovery. Both have drive recovery, redundancy recovery. So I think all things being equal, it really boils down to the geek level. I mean, it's kind of fun to play with servers, and I'm the first one to admit that.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more moving parts and failure options in a server than because you got guys throwing in their RAID cards and their USB
Hmm.
3 cards and the you buy my motherboard. There's no way I could replace that motherboard today. I probably would have used one on eBay, but
Hmm.
and
No, I'm not
draft.
sure I could find mine. That's running on my
You never
server.
know. I mean,
Oh,
guys need to take a look at that too.
Yeah.
sure. Well, I used to run into that quite a bit when I was playing around a lot with servers, and that's one of umpteen different reasons I used to use a separate RAID card, so I could just take the whole thing out, lift it, throw it in another box, and you're back in business. No strain, no pain. You still had to do the reinstall and all that other stuff, but as far as the Windows Server OS and stuff, but that's again not that long and complicated anymore. So
Dave, I think the real question is take away your MSDN subscription,
yes,
right?
yes,
Then what happens, right?
Yeah,
And the
I
NAS
know.
is the hands down winner at that point. I mean, I think you get
yeah.
shut out of some of that server software that we're using in a test mode.
Yeah, we do have it pretty easy being
Yeah.
able to download 2012.
No, right on. I mean, that's one of those things. Even 2011 or 2016, we stopped thinking about the server, the pricing on that because we
Yeah.
take advantage of the subscription. So that's almost like you coming in. So if you just said, hey, if I've lost my MSDN and I no longer could use those benefits, what do I do? Yeah, I mean, I think in that case, I think the NAS wins hands down. A lot of the guys I've talked to recently who are buying those are like, you set up a server. Do I do a NAS? Just my niece's husband asked me a year ago, maybe less. Roger, he listens to the show, and I said, check out a QNAP. And so tonight I just pinged him as we were talking about this. I'm like, hey Roger, we're talking about NASs, and he's like, oh, I'm in Washington and I can't get to the internet right now. Like, it's okay, we're recording it for you, and he's going to come back and listen to it. But he loves his QNAP, and it was just one of those purchases. He's a tech guy, and he would typically be a guy who'd go on server, but that'd be super expensive. Where, because you think about licensing and hardware and all that stuff. He just wanted a backup solution, jumped on QNAP, boom, he's in. So it's easy.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on something, and I think we all took advantage of having the MSDN subscription, and some of these decisions didn't play, into the equation too much. But you're absolutely right. I agree with you. I think if you're coming into it now, you almost have to go that way because, especially if you want to play around with things like VMs and things. I mean, you can do that now on a NAS. You don't have to pay for anything other than, the hardware, obviously, but if you end up using, an actual license because you kept your VM machine running or whatever, then you have to deal with that. But you have to deal with that no matter what. So I mean, the dynamics change when you can't get a free copy of a $800 server.
Yeah, and yet you can. A lot of this functionality has been changed to the cloud. So for a couple bucks, I can run a server instance on Azure if I just want to mess with it, right? If I want to get
Sure.
familiar with it, use it from that perspective. I could fire it up, test it up there, get some functionality, not run it all the time, really, because most of us aren't running our servers or need to run them 24/7 in a lot of cases, unless we're doing all the backup stuff. But so there are some new options as available to us as well that are inexpensive that allow you to get into the server if you're not on MSDN, but you want to try Windows Server for whatever reason. You can do that on Azure now. That works and it's easy to set up and run. Probably a couple bucks a day if you're. I think I probably spend on my Windows boxes. I think I figured it's like a buck an hour or something like that while those things are running. Not cheap when you think about it, but think about all the costs that go into all this stuff, and boom, it's just on the cloud. When you're done, you just shut it off. I ran it tonight. Booted it up for an hour, shut it back down. There's a buck, right? And it allows me to run some stuff in the cloud with some pretty good bandwidth.
I think some of that depends on what you're testing and what you're doing, because running stuff in a cloud and spinning up a VM on Azure, for example, is great for maybe testing some software or doing whatever. But if you actually want to say, all right, I want to experiment and set up a Plex server and I want to see what it does and I want to see how what kind of performance I need. You really got to bring that back inside the four walls, because you're not gonna be able to effectively stream that across your bandwidth unless you've got gigabit up and down.
Well, you could. I mean, on Azure, it's 300 up and down coming out of Azure. So if your local was pretty good, I don't know. I'm not gonna. Yeah, that's not a practical solution. All I'm saying is, for someone who's not able to take advantage of MSDN, and if you want to run some server class to get familiar with it, there are other options out there that where you're not dropping $500 on licensing, to get it done. Dave, what do you got?
Oh, nothing. I'm upgrading the firmware of my TS231 that's back here. It's a web-based setup, and got my credentials in it, set my password, and I didn't want to do it during the middle of the show because I didn't want to crater my PC or something. But
we did lose you a little bit, and your video got a little sketchy. It must have been downloading. It must have been downloading the update.
Or probably, yeah. That's what it's. Yeah. See, that's why you don't do things like this during a live podcast.
Try not to. That's all right.
One last thing I wanted to mention on the topic of backup. One thing we probably didn't talk about is some of these, I won't call them higher end, but mid-range NAS units, like some of the mid-range Synologies and the QNAPs. They've really implemented really good support for USB 3. So the ability to actually back up, because we were talking earlier about where do you get that second physical copy, there's really good solutions to back up to either an external USB drive, or for the storage challenge, like me, you could actually back up to a RAID box. You could get something that's a USB 3 RAID box that has its own set of drives and has 10 or 12 or 15 terabytes of storage in that, and actually use that plugged into your NAS unit to tag team and back up to that, or in some cases provide additional server storage space. So
Mike,
that's
have you tried Mediasonic for something like that? I know they've got those boxes that are pretty, fairly inexpensive. Not.
I have tried a Mediasonic box, but I haven't tried it with the recent QNAP. I had the Lee and Lee box for a while too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that would make a nice alternative.
Because it's not. I mean, they've got. QNAP and Synology as well both have programs that allow you to do real-time replication or backups or whatever, where you can select one or more of your folders and start replicating them real-time to an external box, and that works out really well. I've tested the USB ports in my QNAP. I actually have an SSD attached to the USB port, and it performs really, really well. I mean, you can't tell it apart from a standard USB or SSD. So it's a very flexible solution at the end of the day.
Interesting. And don't forget, up here on my shelf, there's an IO-safe, fireproof, waterproof hard drive, and that's external. You plug that thing in. Right, as long as someone doesn't steal it. Yep, Jim's got his right there.
Right there. Yeah, that's been sitting there next to the 2011 box for a long time. I mean, we've plugged that in. I'd have to go back and see. You can go back to the podcast and kind of see how long that's been set up, because I put it back there and it's been sitting there. That and the IOSafe, and that thing just runs. What a you think you got this hard drive jammed inside this box with no air, or seemingly, and you think that thing would burn out so quick. And that's, I don't know, 3 years old maybe at this point, maybe 4, something like that, at least 3. And it just keeps spinning. It's just a terabyte of space, but I have less than a terabyte total that I back up, the important stuff, the movies and stuff I don't worry about. But
we're talking maybe 2009, maybe 2008.
Early CES, right?
Yeah.
We got those. I bought those the summer after they burned it at CES, I think.
Right. Right, on that crazy parking lot they drug us out to, yeah.
You gotta love those guys.
Well, guys, we're running on hour 15, so I think if we haven't covered it, we can certainly discuss this in the forums, homeservershow.com forums. We've got a huge NAS section where guys are talking Synology, guys are talking QNAP. We brought up a lot of points that you guys can, talk about tonight. Tell us your solution. Hey, tell me if my guy walked into your house and said, "Hey, server NAS, I'm out of here." What would you do? And then play Grim Reaper on yourself and kill the main board on either one of them, and then run that scenario through your head. And maybe it's time to start thinking about, a little more off-site backup. Maybe what happens if water filled your house, 3 inches in your basement? Where's your stuff? Maybe you start doing some disaster recovery thoughts in your head. So hopefully we've made you think just a little bit.
I'd actually like to pose a question in a slightly different way. Same question in a slightly different way, but is looking at it from the other side. I'd be interested, because I know what I felt and what I thought, and I'd be interested to see what people's reaction is or what their answer is to why they must have a server. What do they feel they would be giving up? Because that's an interesting, if you actually put that on paper, it's an interesting list that doesn't end up quite the way you think it does.
Okay. I can see that, because you got a lot of your diehard type folks that you put them to a test, and maybe it's one of those where we need to have like a TV show where you do take their server and you leave them a little 2-bay NAS and you go, here, you got to live with this for a month, and we're going to record everything. So.
Yeah.
Watch people go through withdrawals.
Exactly.
I don't have my server.
Log on.
For a year or two, I have just used them. Right, I haven't
Yeah.
really messed with them. I've just used them, and I think there may be some things that are happening on them that I set up that I've forgotten about. That if they disappeared, I'd be like, oh yeah, I was having to do that. I forgot. That 2011 box is the one that runs the hardest here. I mean, that's the one that does all the file serving. It's my Plex server. It's doing all the backing up for Crash Plan. It does everything. That's the box. The 2012 box is the one I goof off with. So
that's the. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say that is sort of what drove me into this direction in the first place, because as at least some of you know, I went through a major move and relocation and renovations and a bunch of other problems that took place, and the ability to put some of this stuff and the ability to actually fix it and play with it and set it up and do things that I would normally do, prior to all this taking place, kind of went away. So that time kind of went away, and it really started to boil down to, what's really essential and what's really are the necessities. And I mean, if your goal is to play, I mean, there's no better place to play. But as you start paring down your list of things that you really have to do, it may change your outcome a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it.
Yeah, I agree. Let's put that thought process out there in the forums. Let's talk about it, and we may have just created a couple of more podcasts that we have to tackle here. Mike,
have we started this podcast yet?
Oh shoot, I forgot.
There's a good old joke that comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I was just warming up here. So.
You were waiting for that moment to say, "Did we start a podcast?"
That is a wrap. I did start it. I did record it. It's forever going to be out there in the interwaves. Guys, want to thank all the guys for tuning in live. We had a pretty big live show. We had a pretty large viewing on YouTube, so thank everybody for tuning in live. This will be archived on YouTube. It will be archived on audio, so go check that out. You can find it in all of your favorite podcatchers, whatever you use. All of those RSS feeds are on the front page of homeservershow.com, so thank you very much for downloading and And give us some stars on iTunes. If you're an iTunes guy, you use that program, go out there, find the podcast, and give us some stars, give us a review. And I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Jim?
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
You bet. Mike, thanks for coming out again.
Oh, thanks for having me. Anytime. It's good to get behind the microphone again.
You, Mike, by the way. I haven't seen you in a long time, so just great to see you.
Yeah, same here. Same here. We got to do this a little more frequently.
Yep, we will do that. We need to get all the old school back together more frequently.
There you go.
More frequently. All right, guys, that's been Home Server Show 288. See you in the forums. Done. They're still on YouTube, by the way.
Mike,
Thanks, YouTubers.
Your thought, your paring down thought has been one, I think, for the last 6 months. I think about every weekend when I sit down here. And I'm like, do I really need all this stuff? I get in there and and it's so contrary. The problem is so contrary to where we all were 5 years ago, where we were building these massive, and it was like it was a race to see who could build the biggest and the baddest and the hottest, and nobody cared about electricity or size or cost. And so there was this race to the top, and then it almost like we just kind of ran out of steam. Is it that important to have these big Norco boxes and all these things that we went through, and then the NAS generation came where we got some really good. I mean, because let's admit, 2007 NAS wasn't even was not even a gleam in your father's eye, right? Yeah. Just nothing there. But we've kind of come into an age where the equipment has matured and is really good. It's sexy too. I mean, those boxes look good. So those little toasters, throw them on there, throw some drives in them, they look good, and it's just functional. And so I sit here and I'm like, so what do I need to do I need to combine these two, this 2011 box and this Drobo. What do I do? And the Drobo doesn't have near the apps that we see in a Synology or a QNAP.
It doesn't have near the power you need either.
No, because it's 2 years old at this point. I mean, almost 3 with the technology. And so it'll transcode Plex. That works for me. And I can get 2 or 3 streams going at a time. So that part will work. And it's got SSD caching. I mean, so it's got some of those things, but certainly not all of the features that necessarily came with the Synology box. And it's tough for me, Dave. I was going to say this as we were talking on the show, but with the Drobo, my kids bought that for me, so it has sentimental value, right? It's like they pooled their money together, and it was a big deal for them to buy that for me for my birthday. And so it's tough for me to let that go.
You don't actually have to let it go. I mean, you can still use it as a repository because the NAS units that you buy, you got to decide there too, because the pricing is not linear depending on how many bays you have. So, if you've got a second unit that you could say use for file serving, for Plex or movies or whatever, and then you can afford to buy a slightly smaller unit, maybe a 2 or a 4 bay, preferably 4 bay unit, versus buying like an 8 bay unit and trying to combine both, because then that pricing goes significantly higher. That was my problem when I looked for a NAS, was getting something that I could afford, because it hurts when you have to spend $1,000 on a NAS unit.
Mm-hmm.
BYON, right? Buy your own NAS.
Yeah.
It's the new. Well, no, not that I need to give up the Drobo. That's not what but for me, it's one of those things if I wanted to, because I think QNAP or Synology is actually better than a Drobo right now. Any of those Synology boxes is better. But I don't want to switch, because it's like my kids bought me that box. And if they come down there, hey, Dad, how's that Drobo, that you talked about for so long that we finally bought you? You're like, oh, yeah, I gave that away. or I sold it, for $200 on eBay. And so that's a little bit of a dilemma on my part. It's a great file server. All my podcast stuff is on it. It continues just to hum along. It's been a great buy and a great box. It does exactly what I need it to do.
Sure.
But it doesn't do all the fun stuff. There are some things that it doesn't do. You know, it doesn't do the home automation stuff. It doesn't do the camera stuff. It doesn't do, you know, all those nifty gadgets that comes with a Synology or QNAP.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's you know, everything's got a slight amount of compromise, but if you know, if you would have asked me a few couple of years ago, I would have said there's no compromises running a server, but in reality there is, because there's things that it doesn't do very well either.
Right.
And there's actually more applications and more inherent functionality that you can add to a NAS unit than you possibly could on a server without getting into some really convoluted software installations.
Right. Yeah. It's just that ecosystem is built now.
Yeah.
And so I think for the average user, it just makes sense to be on a NAS.
Yeah, from a ground. Yeah, I think so.
The average guy, I think the average guy, hands down, it's a NAS. And the prices have come down. The one drawback is some of those big ones are just as expensive as buying a server license. So
absolutely.
You're like, okay.
That's why when I decided I would try this, I really wanted to keep the thing under $500.
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted 4 drives, but I wanted it under $500 because you know there's some nice units out there that have like 6 or 8 bays that you know are in the $800-900 range that. You know, unless you know what you're buying. I mean, if you had your first experience with an NAS and you're saying, okay, I want to buy another one, then you might be more inclined to spend the money. But, you know, trying to say, if I'm going to go from a server to a NAS, can I do it? Man, that just hurts to spend that much. And you don't have any drives in it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I actually upgraded the RAM. I dropped 8 gigs of RAM into the NAS unit. And then didn't want to use the drives I had because they were too small. I wasn't going to get the storage I wanted, so I ended up having to buy new drives. So it adds up pretty quickly, so you're going to have to think about that a little bit too. It's kind of nice to have more bays because you can use, you know, the 2 or the 3 or the 4 terabyte drives that are, you know, consistently on sale.
Well, that TS 453. What did you get? What do you have?
451.
Yeah, so the 453, which is the 8 gig version, 4 bay, to Intel 2 gigahertz quad core, is 667.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a little bit of change.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that's the model up from the one I have. That's the quad core version. I have the dual core version. But
you're the 51, right? So that's like a 4. I think that's 43 here.
I actually saw it for $379,
okay.
which is I haven't seen again since they had the sale. But you know, at the $379 range, it's a no-brainer at that point. You know, even at the 400 range, it's a no-brainer just for the power that you get and the flexibility that you get, which you're still faced with, you know, putting drives in it. And you know, being it's a RAID box like any other RAID, you got to buy same size drives.
Yep.
So you can't just put a 1 and a 5 and a whatever in there. So
I love that about the Drobo.
Yeah, you could. I mean, it's not the same. Drobo does a better job with their way of creating kind of a hybrid RAID solution. This is a true, you know, most NAS units are true RAID, so they've automated a lot of the rebuild tasks and stuff like that, but it's still a RAID 5 at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I went with a $900 chassis, the Synology 1813. That's
that's a nice box, yeah.
Big old box right there.
That is a big old box. What's that run power wise? Do you know?
I don't even remember. I do not. I could plug that back into my kilowatt, but I don't recall, Jim.
See, that I'd like to have a box about that size because then I could not have to worry too much about future expansion.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it does get a bit pricey. I'm curious to see what you think of the QNAP versus the Synology software approach, because that was the one deterrent I had for going to QNAP versus the Synology was the software seems more convoluted on the Synology.
Okay.
And
I'll definitely let you know.
And then power to dollar ratio seemed a bit off too. Okay. So I'm curious to see what you come up with.
Well, so far it's not so good. I'm having trouble getting the dang thing on. So.
But it looks good. That's all that matters.
It is good looking.
It's got beeps and stuff. So
lights. Flashy, blinky lights.
And it may not have liked. I put a couple of 2 terabyte drives in it. It may not like. I don't know what's going on with them. It will not format them, and it's having trouble.
That's weird. I've tried everything, but from green drives to the Seagates to the red drives, and all seem to work. For at least they were able to be configured and formatted and set up. But
yeah, I just got the QFinder installed, and I'm gonna try it again. I just rebooted it while we were chatting here. So.
Well, good luck.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
I like that.
Good luck. We'll see if Jim's earlier comment about you take it out of the box, 10 minutes later it's up and running. Let's see if that holds true.
Yeah, that's true.
The only thing that's 10 minutes out of a box is an Apple device. Everything else takes a little longer time to set up.
You might be right. Hey, what do you think of this new router from Google?
The new router?
Have you seen that? The On Hub, I think is what they're calling it. It came out yesterday. I guess they announced it yesterday afternoon. It's a $290. Is it $299? No, it's $199. It's just a Wi-Fi router, but they've supposedly taken all the complexities out of the setup. You get into a Wi-Fi router today, and it's it's a little sketchy for the average guy. And this is supposed to be, turn the thing on. You got an app on your phone, connect to it, do a few settings, and then it kind of does. It's got 13
yes, I did hear about this. Yeah, I did hear about this.
On that dual band and a bunch of antennas, and supposed to be. They're supposed to really scale down the complexity of the setup so that you're getting a secure Wi-Fi and then faster speeds, apparently, across Wi-Fi.
I'll have to check that out. I heard about that on an audio show. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't spent the time to go look for it yet.
Yeah, it kind of looks like an Echo. It's got that tall cylinder. Yeah. More like a vase. It kind of tapers up, but little blue light on the top, or I guess there's 4 different colors. But originally I thought it was supposed to be an Echo competitor. That's what I thought, but it's supposed to replace your Wi-Fi router.
I've got to check that out.
Yeah.
That's what I need, another Wi-Fi router around here.
Hey, I just picked up I had an Asus. I think I had an Asus one that just would not stay on. I mean, it kept. Sarah was on it all the time. I never use it anymore, but she was on it, getting kicked off all the time, and it was 2 years old, and it's just after a while some of those things give up the ghost. I tried upgrading the firmware, rebooting, all that stuff, right? Just nothing. So I think it was Schoonover or one of the guys, maybe it was a guy at work, recommended one of these super cheap TP-Link $20 Wi-Fi ones, and I'm like, well, what the heck? I'll give it a try and just kind of see. Trying the model I gave you the model. Anyways, doesn't matter. I think it was $25. And that thing, I've had it up for maybe 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
Oh, hold on a second. I got somebody at the door.
Yep.
Is that the one I was talking about with Dwayne Robinson?
Was it $25?
Yeah, I think it was 30. I bought one. It's sitting right over there.
Yeah.
I buy everything.
It's been a really good Wi-Fi router. Yeah. I mean, it works. What did they deliver?
Hey guys, I hate to run, but I got a contractor here, so.
Oh, yeah.
Take care of it, Mike. We appreciate you coming out.
See you, Mike. Good talking to you, man.
Good talking to you guys. We'll do this again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See you later.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I am.
Well, I can't get back into this stupid thing.
Is the TLWR 841N.
Oh, that sounds too complicated.
841N.
I just bought an access point.
Oh, okay. No, this is a full router.
It's
1999.
a bridge, too.
Yeah. 1999 is what this thing was.
Nice.
How freaking cheap.
That's cheap.
N speeds. So no AC, but pretty easy to set up. Works like a charm in the house here. Good enough is what didn't have to be great, just good enough.
Let's try this. Where's QFinder at?
Man, that's gonna haunt you.
Okay, well, I'm in this thing. See if it'll do its firmware.
Chris says you can plug in the HDMI cable and see what's happening when it's booting.
I don't have HDMI out on mine. I do not. Plug it into what? Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'll bring it to Meetup. You guys can play with it. Maybe I'll just set it up generic. Let Chris show us. Chris will show us the way.
Chris Kenny.
Chris Kenny. Which, by the way, he registered tonight. Finally.
Good.
One Christopher Kenny.
I finally got in there. The other day, I'm like, I've never paid for the meetup. I should get that done.
Very good. You can eat, Jim.
Yeah. Yes.
I pay as well. I pay out the nose.
Oh, you pay a lot, dude.
Well, I needed this stuff because I needed things to be like set in stone so I can do some things. So I started ordering. And today I ordered my gift to everybody. So I always have a gift.
We should always be bringing gifts for you.
That's right.
Why.
Or terabyte. Red is my favorite color.
Oh,
no,
man.
I don't need it. I don't need a gift. I want people to show up.
Yeah.
I want people to show up.
Yeah. Sounds like we're gonna have some good gear there.
I think
from
so.
what I hear from boys.
In fact, look at that.
Oh, that reminds me. I need to bill.
I got an
I need to bill a
inventory
customer.
alert.
So I
I got
have
an
some
inventory alert from PayPal. There's only 5 units of HSS Meetup 2015 left.
Really?
I think I cut it at 40, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I'll have to increase that.
I need to bill. I have a customer that's going to help me get there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That is very good.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's always helpful. Helpful that Sarah always feels better about it when I do this stuff and I don't take it out of the family budget. I'm like, no, I worked for it. It's coming out of the. I need to get a tax person who will really help me figure out, because I know there's things I'm paying for that I could be taken advantage of from a tax standpoint. It's one of those kinds of things where enough money is flowing through now. I should probably worry about the tax implications of it.
Yeah, mine is pretty much. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy if you do it. Except, I better check my taxes. Indiana moved me to monthly.
Ooh.
Like, I hate that.
Monthly. Reporting monthly?
Yes.
Ugh.
They want their money, Jim.
I know.
Hate it. And the other thing is Meetup. Meetup always falls like right around the Apple announcement, but way, way before anything Microsoft does. Microsoft always goes in October. I think we should do a spring meetup. I think we should do a spring meetup. A spring up.
Yeah, now that, well, CES is January, right? And now NAB, it's not there anymore. Yeah. I think I'm going to try and do Podcast Movement this summer. It's in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So
I thought
think,
about doing that too.
yeah.
The last one looked really interesting.
Yeah, they did some, that was cool. Those guys that are running that conference are doing a nice job. I think that's a pretty dynamite thing they got going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my Google Calendar. Yeah. So I think we got Redmond covered. We got Meetup. We got Redmond covered.
Oh shit! It's beeping. I did not like something. Do you want to restart? Okay. I'll restart. The firmware updated. We're go.
Oh,
so
cool.
So what, Jim?
Oh no, I was just thinking through the various stuff coming up.
Right, the various conferences.
So we've got Seattle in November, and then Susan had me convinced I needed to get out to CES, but I don't know. It's a busy time for me, and I don't know if CES has got what it.
You know what? If you take a different look at CES and you just go to go, right?
Yeah.
You just.
Yeah, oh yeah. Vegas isn't. If I'm going to spend money, Vegas is just not the place I'm going to go.
Yeah.
So if
but there's just so much out there right now, and like the home automation.
I know.
You can. Having a Gadget Geek podcast, you can fill your year with that one show.
Yeah, so I just got these. In the mail. So these are Bluetooth earbuds for working out that are, and these are those Anir that Anir that's been making those. They've been making a bunch. They sent me a garage gadget. It's a battery operated LED, motion sensitive motion activated, and pretty cool. And they contacted me. They're like, hey, from a gadget standpoint, they're like, hey, you want to review these? And so posting gadget posts gets you more gadgets. So
and they will.
Yeah. No, not. So these are this. This is kind of these are these Bluetooth. So it's got that little wire that puts them together. This is the charger on there, and it's not normally on there. But they're like $30, $40, which Bluetooth is typically like $100, so they're going on the low end. So I give these a try. I don't know, they look kind of funky. I'm not gonna lie, that looks uncomfortable.
I wonder if you can mow with them. I like to put earbuds underneath some Mickey Mouse ears.
Yeah.
And as long as they have to be loud.
This one's there's the controls right there. So there's a control, that's a clicker and that's a clicker on there. And so when you get them in, you can, forward, back, turn your thing up. So I wrote up and installed that light, which was kind of fun. It took me 3 hours, which is kind of fun. And I got to do these. So yeah, I know it's just on the gadget side. There's tons of little gadget things that are out there at CES. I don't know if maybe I'll just let CES come to me. Yeah. See if I can keep getting. I get a couple. I'm sure you get them all the time too, right? Or hey, I got a new one today. I got this dog grooming kit.
Oh. I do. I turn away.
Yeah.
I turn away a lot of stuff, but I mean, it still comes in.
Yeah.
the amount of stuff that comes in, like server, probably 10%.
Yeah.
The rest of it is home automation, gadgets, and
Yeah.
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 Like I've got so much home automation gear on the other side of this monitor right here that's in a row, that's lined up, ready to go. Ready to install. Like how did this come in? Where did this come from? This is a door sensor, right?
Right.
This is a Z-Wave door sensor I did a video on, and here's the piece of metal that goes on it. Click, click. It's a sensor. It's got a 10-year battery in it.
We need to. We should just do a home automation show with just all the things you've gotten in.
I have
I should
tons
get you
ready to
scheduled.
go.
Why don't I get you scheduled for one?
No, I mean I could fill a couple of shows, Jim.
Well, I know, but we could at least get you scheduled for one.
Oh, wait till the Smart Things Hub 2 comes out.
When's that going to come out?
I don't know. I just pre-ordered it.
Okay.
It's supposed to be late this month, I think.
Can you do Thursday nights?
No, my wife would shoot me if I tried to do Wednesday and Thursday.
That's always well. If you get a week where it works, let me know and we'll squeeze you in.
Okay. Yeah, I've got so much stuff. I mean, I've got my review desk over there where I put the lights and do the videos. It's full. I still have to do things before I do meetup, so I can give those things away. Lately, I've been doing this thing. This bad boy. See the network operator in the top right there?
Yeah.
Oops. Microphone.
Yeah, how you liking that?
It says T-Mobile now. I like it. It's crazy. There's focus. There's times where it kind of drives me nuts, but then I look at the bill.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, I got some work coming in. I better.
Okay. Yeah, we better go.
Yep. All right, man.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yep.
YouTubers, we're gonna take off. Yeah, Jim.
Later. See you.